The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the village. Torches flickered in the chilly evening air, and the scent of baked bread and roasted meats still lingered in the hall. Laughter and music had faded hours ago, leaving only the soft murmur of conversation among the last stragglers who had lingered, reluctant to leave the celebration. Two figures sat side by side on a carved wooden bench, hands lightly brushing together as if testing the reality of their newfound union. Their hearts were still racing from the excitement, and their smiles held a mixture of relief and wonder. Outside, the first stars appeared in the velvet sky, tiny sparks of light reflected in their eyes. They leaned into each other without speaking, sharing a quiet moment that belonged only to them, a fragile bubble where the chaos of the world had yet to intrude. The air smelled of pine smoke and dew, a reminder of the forest that cradled their home, and the world seemed impossibly vast and intimate at the same time. The bride's hand found her husband's, fingers entwining naturally, as if they had always been meant to touch. They spoke of nothing in particular, yet every glance, every small movement, carried the weight of shared understanding. The night deepened, and they heard the distant hoot of an owl, a solitary witness to the start of their life together. They did not know then how many seasons they would see together, how many storms and sunrises would pass before they could fully grasp the depth of what had begun. The idea of a honeymoon, a month of sweet beginnings, was not foreign to them, though they knew it would be unlike anything their ancestors had experienced. Yet in their hearts, the essence remained the same: a time to drink deeply from joy, to savor sweetness before the demands of the world pressed in. The husband poured 2 cups of mead, the golden liquid catching the torchlight and turning it into molten fire. He handed one to his wife, who accepted it with a shy smile, their fingers brushing over the rim. They toasted quietly, savoring the taste, the warmth, the symbolism of the first shared sip of their new life. The mead was thick, sweet, and heavy with the scent of wildflowers. It clung to their lips, leaving a taste that lingered, a memory already forming of this earliest night. They laughed softly at nothing, the kind of laughter that emerges from relief and exhilaration all at once. Outside, the snow had begun to fall lightly, each flake glowing in the torchlight like a miniature star. They did not notice the cold. The warmth of their shared presence was enough. For a moment, they felt invincible, as if the world had contracted to a perfect, private sphere where nothing could touch them. Their village had celebrated long into the night, drums and fiddles echoing in memory. But now there was only the quiet hum of anticipation, the gentle rhythm of 2 hearts beginning to beat together in a shared pattern. They spoke of dreams and fears, of hopes that stretched far into the future, and fears that clung to the past. They promised to hold each other steady through storms they could not yet imagine. And though they did not say it aloud, they knew that this first month, this honeymoon, would be sacred, a bridge between who they had been and who they were becoming. Days passed, marked by the movement of the sun and the waxing and waning of the moon. Each night, they shared mead and laughter, discovering the rhythms of life together. The mead was more than a drink. It was a vessel carrying generations of belief, of hope, of joy distilled into liquid gold. In the warmth of their small home, they spoke freely, explored quietly, and learned the contours of each other's hearts. Their bodies and minds were discovering new intimacy, a sweetness that could not be hurried, a depth that was built slowly, sip by sip, moment by moment. The forest outside seemed to conspire with them, birds singing at dawn, the wind whispering through branches, as if nature itself blessed their union. In these early days, the moon traced a perfect path across the night sky, each phase a quiet witness to their commitment. They named the stars and imagined constellations that would belong only to them, weaving stories into the heavens. As the weeks passed, the intensity of the first days softened into a gentle, enduring comfort. The sweetness of the honey lingered, not as an overwhelming rush, but as a quiet foundation on which their love could grow. They faced small challenges, illness, chores, the occasional misunderstanding, but met each with patience, learning that love was not only about sweetness but also about endurance. The mead, once a symbol of excitement and fertility, became a ritual of connection, a nightly reminder of the choices they made to invest in each other. And when the month drew to a close, they understood that the honeymoon was not an event but a mindset. It was the intention to honor, to cherish, and to create space for joy even in the midst of life's complexities. They stepped into the wider world together, carrying the memory of each golden sip, each starry night, each whispered promise. The world had not changed, but they had. They had learned to move as one, to protect the sweetness of beginnings, and to embrace the inevitable changes that came with time. And so, the story of their marriage began, a life unfolding with the rhythm of the moon, the warmth of honey, and the enduring light of love. The days blended into one another, a gentle rhythm of sun and moon, work and rest, laughter and quiet reflection. They woke each morning to the smell of fresh bread and the crisp scent of pine, drifting through the small wooden windows. The husband would fetch water from the nearby stream, the chill of the early hour biting at his fingers, and she would arrange wildflowers in small clay pots, their colors bright against the warm, dark wood of their home. Every movement felt new, every glance loaded with curiosity and tenderness. Sometimes they would sit outside, wrapped in blankets, watching the fog roll through the trees, imagining the lives of their ancestors and wondering how love had survived through centuries of storms, famine, and war. They learned the subtle language of each other's moods. A soft sigh meant contemplation. A nervous smile meant excitement. Their laughter became a melody that threaded through the walls of the house, lingering even when one went to fetch firewood or tend the small garden outside. In these moments, they realized that love was not only in grand gestures, but also in the small, unspoken choices, letting the other have the last piece of bread, pausing to listen when words were scarce, sharing warmth when the nights grew bitter. The honey mead remained central to their evenings. They had learned to make it themselves, stirring the thick liquid with reverent care, knowing that each sip connected them to generations long gone. The golden glow of the mead seemed to hold memory and promise alike. Sometimes they would toast silently to the first full moon, watching its reflection ripple in the water of the stream, feeling as if the moon itself bore witness to their devotion. Other nights, they spoke at length about the dreams that had once felt fragile and distant. He spoke of distant lands he longed to see, mountains he wished to climb, and rivers he wished to cross. She spoke of stories she had imagined as a child, of music and art, of the simple pleasure of creating beauty in the world. Together, their dreams intertwined, forming a tapestry that stretched across time, each thread a promise of shared adventure and shared quiet. But the sweetness of the honeymoon was not without its shadows. The harsh realities of life occasionally intruded. Cold rains soaked the fields, forcing them to work harder to protect their home. A misstep while chopping wood left her with a tender bruise, and he could not help but feel guilt at the fragility of their mortal bodies. Yet these moments only deepened their connection. They tended to each other with patience, learning that love was a balance of joy and care, sweetness and endurance. At night, when the fire had dwindled to embers and the moon hung high in the sky, they would lie side by side, hands clasped, tracing the lines of each other's faces with gentle fingers. They whispered stories of old, the Viking rituals that had given their first sip of mead to ancestors, the Celtic songs sung to bless marriages, the tales of couples who had navigated love across centuries. In these stories, they found reflection of themselves, realizing that the heartbeat of love had remained constant through all time, ever changing yet fundamentally the same. The moon waxed and waned, each phase a subtle teacher. On the nights of the new moon, when darkness enveloped the sky, they found comfort in each other's presence, knowing that even in obscurity, light would return. On full moon nights, their joy felt incandescent, their laughter spilling into the forest, echoing among the ancient trees, as if nature itself celebrated with them. And when the moon reached its half phases, they reflected on the balance of life, work, and rest, giving and receiving, dreaming and acting. Each night became a meditation, a quiet acknowledgement that love required both sweetness and awareness, just as the honey needed careful tending to ferment into mead. As the first month drew near its end, they took long walks through the forest together. The snow had melted, revealing the earth beneath, damp and alive with the smell of moss and soil. Birds flitted through the branches above, and the gentle hum of insects in the underbrush added a soft rhythm to their steps. They spoke of what the coming months might hold, their fears, their hopes, the life they intended to build together. And through it all, they discovered the true depth of the honeymoon. It was not only a celebration of love, but also a practice, a rehearsal for the trials and triumphs that would inevitably follow. They returned to their home one evening, breathless from laughter after a playful chase through the forest. The mead had cooled on the table, but the ritual was unchanged. They poured it carefully, the golden liquid glinting in the firelight. They clinked their cups softly and drank, savoring not just the sweetness of the mead, but the richness of the life they were beginning to weave together. In that moment, they understood that the honeymoon had never truly been about time or drink alone. It had been about presence, about intentionality, about the deliberate choice to notice each other, to honor each other, and to create space for love to flourish. The final night of the first moon arrived, and with it came a quiet contemplation. They sat outside, the night air cool against their skin, the stars scattered like silver dust across the sky. They did not speak much, for words felt inadequate. Instead, they held each other close, feeling the pulse of life in each heartbeat, the warmth of shared breath, the solidity of connection that had grown slowly over weeks of laughter, conversation, and quiet intimacy. The moon, full and luminous, cast its reflection on the water nearby. In that reflection, they saw themselves, two separate beings joined in shared purpose, poised to navigate the seasons of life together. The next morning, the village awoke to a bright sun and the sound of roosters crowing, signaling the start of ordinary life. Yet, for the couple, nothing felt ordinary. Their hearts carried the sweetness of honey and the glow of moonlight, a secret reservoir of joy and tenderness that would sustain them through the trials and monotony of everyday existence. They went about their tasks, tending the garden, repairing fences, cooking meals, with a new rhythm, a rhythm infused with intention and gratitude. Each touch, each glance, each shared word was a continuation of the lessons learned during their first month together. And so, the honeymoon ended, not with sadness, but with quiet fulfillment. They had learned to treasure the sweetness, to honor the cycles, and to embrace change. They understood that love was both ephemeral and enduring, delicate and resilient, a practice as much as a passion. As the seasons shifted, they carried the memory of that first month into every sunrise and sunset, letting the warmth of honey and the light of the moon guide them through the long journey ahead together. Spring arrived quietly, brushing the village with soft green, and the couple felt the world awaken alongside their own hearts. The snow had retreated entirely, leaving behind a patchwork of wildflowers and damp earth that smelled of rain and life. Each morning they rose to bird song, and sometimes the sky blushed pink as the sun peeked through the mist, promising a new day filled with possibilities. They walked hand in hand through the fields, the husband pointing out herbs and berries, the wife collecting flowers for their home. The simple routines became acts of devotion, each movement a meditation, each glance a silent affirmation of shared love. Neighbors began to notice the harmony between them. The elder women of the village would whisper to each other, "They are like the first moon and honey, still sweet, still bright." Children laughed nearby, chasing one another through puddles, and the couple would join them, caught up in laughter that seemed to dissolve any trace of fatigue or worry. Life, they realized, was not only about grand adventures, but also about finding joy in small moments. A bird landing on a fence, the scent of fresh bread in the morning, the shared silence as the sun set behind the distant hills. The couple's home grew warmer with activity. They learned to cook together, discovering the rhythm of chopping, stirring, and tasting as a shared dance. Some nights, the husband would make mistakes with a recipe, spilling flour across the table, and they would collapse into laughter, wiping hands and cheeks as if the mess were a celebration rather than a problem. Other nights, the wife would try a new bread, burning the edges, and he would smile through the smoky scent, reminding her that effort mattered more than perfection. Each meal became a symbol of their cooperation, their patience, their willingness to share life in all its messy, beautiful entirety. One evening, a storm rolled in from the mountains, heavy rain drumming against the roof, lightning illuminating the sky in jagged flashes. They huddled together near the hearth, the wind whistling through cracks in the walls, and in that moment, the world felt both dangerous and intimate. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, she pressed her forehead against his chest, and together they watched the storm as if it were a performance meant only for them. The mead sat untouched on the table, forgotten, because they had discovered that sweetness could exist even without ritual. It was in their closeness, in the way their fingers intertwined, in the warmth of shared presence. As the weeks turned into months, the couple began to explore beyond the village. They followed the stream deeper into the forest, discovering hidden clearings, clusters of wild strawberries, and ancient trees with gnarled roots that seemed to whisper stories of the past. Sometimes they would sit on fallen logs, speaking softly of hopes for the future, children, travels, and the kind of home that could shelter love for generations. Other times, they simply sat in silence, letting the world pass around them, savoring the sensation of being together without distraction. They also faced challenges, as life inevitably demanded. There were days when work in the fields was exhausting, when the weather was unkind, or when disagreements arose over small matters: how to plant the garden, how to repair the roof, how to prioritize tasks. Yet each challenge became a lesson in partnership. They discovered the importance of listening, of compromise, of seeing the other not as an obstacle, but as a collaborator in the ongoing project of life. Even when tempers flared, they remembered the first month, the honeymoon, and allowed its sweetness to temper frustration, reminding themselves that love was built over time, not only in moments of passion but also in quiet endurance. Winter returned eventually, harsher than the first. Snow blanketed the fields once more, and the couple spent long hours by the fire, their bodies warming against the chill of the season. They crafted gifts for one another, small tokens of affection: a carved wooden bird, a stitched cloth, a bundle of dried herbs. These acts of care, tiny and deliberate, carried the essence of the honeymoon forward, transforming everyday life into a ritual of love. The mead, though no longer a nightly obligation, appeared on special occasions, a reminder of beginnings, of traditions that spanned generations, of the sweetness that had once marked the first month and now continued as a guiding principle. One night, as the full moon rose over the snowy forest, the couple walked outside, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air. They paused to look at its silver light reflecting on the snow, each flake sparkling as if infused with magic. The husband took her hand in his, held it tightly, and whispered, "Do you remember our first night?" She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder, and together they remembered the golden mead, the warm hearth, the quiet intimacy of beginnings. "It feels like yesterday," she said softly. "And yet we've grown so much since then." The husband nodded. "We drank from the honey, we followed the moon, and here we are." Stronger, wiser, together. Through seasons of growth and challenge, laughter and sorrow, the couple realized that the honeymoon was never merely a month. It was a philosophy, a way of living that honored sweetness, presence, and care. It was the courage to see the other fully, to walk hand in hand through storms and sunshine alike. And though years would pass, children would arrive, and responsibilities would multiply, the essence of that first moon remained, a quiet reminder that love is not only celebrated in beginnings, but nurtured every day. As the moon traced its path across the sky, they found themselves gazing upward often, reflecting on how far they had come. Every phase of the moon mirrored their own experiences, the waxing bringing hope and anticipation, the full moon illuminating joy, the waning a reminder of impermanence, and the dark of the new moon a challenge to trust in unseen growth. They understood now that life's sweetness was not constant but cyclical, like honey's lingering taste that fades only to return richer the next time. And so, with each day, they honored the lessons of the honeymoon. They embraced joy and challenge in equal measure, celebrated the mundane as well as the extraordinary, and found in each other a source of endless wonder. The fire in their hearth became a symbol of continuity, the mead a taste of history and tradition, the moon a measure of time and reflection. Life unfolded before them, vast and unpredictable, but they faced it together, knowing that the sweetness of beginnings could guide them through any darkness. Spring gave way to summer, and the couple's world bloomed in color and warmth. The fields were alive with crops, the streams ran clearer with melted snow from distant mountains, and the forest seemed to hum with life. Each morning, they woke to golden sunlight spilling through the windows, and their home became a sanctuary of laughter, work, and shared dreams. The wife tended a small garden, planting herbs and vegetables that would sustain them through winter, while the husband repaired fences, chopped wood, and made small improvements to their home. Each task, though ordinary, became an act of love because it was done together. On sunny afternoons, they would lie in the grass, heads close, watching clouds drift lazily across the sky. Sometimes, the wife would read aloud from old books she had found in the village, stories of heroes, gods, and ancient love, while the husband listened, marveling at her voice and the way her eyes sparkled with imagination. Other times they would simply lie in silence, hands clasped, hearts attuned to the rhythms of each other's breathing. They found that love did not always need words. Presence alone carried meaning deeper than any sentence could convey. One evening, after a long day in the fields, they prepared mead together. It had become a ritual, though no longer tied to a specific month. It was now a symbol of continuity, a connection to the generations that had celebrated before them. They poured the golden liquid into cups and held them in the firelight, savoring both the taste and the quiet intimacy it inspired. They laughed about small mistakes, a spill here, a bubble there, but each error became a memory, a shared story that would grow sweeter with time. Their first child arrived in the heat of summer, and life shifted in a way that was at once challenging and miraculous. Nights became sleepless, and days were filled with care and attention, but the couple found joy in every detail: the curve of a tiny hand, the softness of a newborn's sigh, the first smile that seemed to light up the room. They discovered that love could expand infinitely, that the sweetness of the honeymoon could live within the work of caring, feeding, and nurturing another life. The mead, once drunk for celebration of their own love, now became a quiet indulgence for themselves, a reminder of beginnings, a private ritual amidst the responsibilities of parenthood. Even as challenges grew, the sicknesses that occasionally swept through the village, the harsh winters that threatened their crops, disagreements about chores or schedules, the couple found that the principles of the honeymoon guided them. Patience, presence, and intentionality allowed them to navigate difficulties with grace. The moon continued to mark time, waxing and waning as it had for centuries, and they observed its phases together, seeing in it a mirror of their own lives, the full moons of joy, the dark moons of trials, and the gradual growth in between. They took occasional walks beyond the village, exploring forests, streams, and hills they had not yet discovered. They marveled at the natural world, the way light fell through leaves, the sound of rushing water over stones, the quiet songs of distant birds. Each outing became a miniature adventure, an echo of the old traditions of honeymoon journeys, where couples would explore, learn, and grow together in harmony with nature. Sometimes they would pause in a clearing, sharing mead and conversation, dreaming aloud of the future, the next child, a larger home, perhaps even travels beyond the mountains that framed their small world. As seasons cycled, the couple's bond deepened in ways that neither had anticipated. Laughter and tears, triumphs and failures, joys and griefs, all became woven into a tapestry of shared experience. They discovered that love was not static, it evolved, like the moon above, waxing and waning but never disappearing entirely. Even ordinary tasks, feeding animals, mending clothes, preparing meals, became acts of devotion when done together. Each day offered small opportunities to practice kindness, patience, and understanding. Years passed, and their family grew. Children's laughter filled the home, their voices a new melody layered over the original harmony of the couple's love. The couple taught them the old stories, the significance of the honeymoon, the symbolism of the golden mead, and the cycles of the moon that had guided generations before them. They shared with the children the lessons they had learned, that sweetness was fleeting, but presence and care could make it last, that love required attention, effort, and understanding, that beginnings, while beautiful, were only the first chapter in a lifelong story. Through all these years, the couple returned each evening to the rituals that had begun in the first month, the sharing of mead, the quiet conversation by the fire, the walks beneath the moonlight. They realized that the honeymoon was not just a fleeting moment of sweetness, but a guiding principle, a reminder that love must be tended, celebrated, and honored every day. They marveled at how far they had come, from the nervous excitement of their wedding night to the deep, enduring connection they now shared. And on nights when the moon was full and bright, casting silver light over the snow or the green fields, they would pause and reflect on their journey. The honeymoon had taught them that love was both fragile and resilient, fleeting and enduring, ordinary and extraordinary, all at once. They understood that beginnings were precious, but the life that followed, the ordinary, the mundane, the daily acts of care and connection, was where true sweetness resided. As they sat together, hands entwined, watching the moon rise over the horizon, they knew that the lessons of their first month would remain with them forever. The honey would always be sweet, The moon would always wax and wane, and their love, rooted in those early days, would carry them through all seasons of life. And in that knowledge they found peace, joy, and the quiet triumph of a life shared fully, deeply, and lovingly. The years rolled on, each season layering itself onto the next, and the couple's life became a tapestry of shared experience, both ordinary and extraordinary. Their children grew, laughter filling the home like music, while the couple found new depths to their own love in ways they had never anticipated. Mornings began with the rustle of little feet across the wooden floors, the scent of bread baking in the oven, and the gentle clatter of chores being shared between partners. Each day was a lesson in patience and presence, a practice of seeing the other not only as they were, but as they could become. They watched the children discover the world as they had once done, eyes wide with curiosity, hearts untainted by disappointment. The couple guided them with gentle hands and steady words, teaching them to notice the sweetness of small things, a flower blooming, a bird's song, the way sunlight slanted through the trees. They reminded the children of the moon's cycles, telling them that just as the moon waxes and wanes, life too has bright moments and shadowed ones, and both are necessary for understanding the full beauty of existence. The honey mead, once the centerpiece of the honeymoon, now became a tradition for special moments. Birthdays, harvest festivals, the return of a long-lost neighbor, these occasions were marked with the golden liquid, a symbol of continuity, history, and celebration. The husband would pour it with care, the wife would lift her cup in quiet acknowledgement, and they would toast to the memories of their first month, the foundation upon which everything else had been built. Even in the midst of chaos, the mead reminded them that sweetness could always be found if they took the time to notice. Challenges arose, as they always do in life. A harsh winter brought illness to the village, and their children fell one by one to fevers that tested the couple's endurance. They worked tirelessly, tending to the sick, boiling herbs, soothing restless bodies, and staying awake through endless nights. Yet, even in these moments, the principles of the honeymoon guided them: patience, attentiveness, and unwavering presence. Each trial strengthened their bond, revealing the resilience that true love demands. They discovered that sweetness was not only in joy but in endurance, in the quiet courage to care when it would be easier to give up. In the summers, they returned to the forest paths they had explored in their first year of marriage. Now, they walked with children in tow, pointing out hidden flowers, collecting wild berries, teaching them the names of birds and trees. The forest became a classroom, a sanctuary, and a playground. They told the stories of their ancestors, of Viking traditions, of the mead that had once symbolized fertility and hope, of the first month of marriage when the honey and the moon marked the beginning of a journey. The children listened, wide-eyed, understanding that their parents' love was rooted in both history and intention, a gift passed down through generations. Time brought new opportunities and small adventures. Occasionally, the couple traveled to neighboring villages to visit relatives or attend festivals. These trips were not luxurious, but they were moments of connection and discovery, reminders that the world was vast and life was filled with possibilities. The couple walked hand in hand through cobbled streets, sharing laughter, discovering new foods, and meeting new faces. Each journey reminded them of the first month, when every day had felt like a revelation, and reinforced the idea that life's sweetness was most fully realized when shared. Evenings became sacred. After the children slept, the couple would sit by the fire, recounting their day, sharing thoughts, fears, and small victories. Sometimes they would dance slowly to imagine music, hands clasped, swaying as if the world had disappeared. Other nights they would sit in quiet reflection, holding hands, the moonlight spilling through the windows, casting silver across the floor. These small rituals became the pillars of their relationship, extending the spirit of the honeymoon into the everyday, ensuring that love remained alive not only in passion but in care, attention, and shared presence. They also experienced profound moments of awe and wonder. One clear night, the sky exploded with stars, the Milky Way stretching across the heavens in silvery brilliance. They stood together, arms around one another, marveling at the vastness of the universe. "It is beautiful," she whispered, "and it feels like we are part of it," he replied. They understood then that the honeymoon had not been only about their own love, but about connection to each other, to the past, to the cycles of nature, and to the universe itself. Each full moon reminded them that love was a part of the great pattern of life, a constant rhythm amid change. As their children grew into adolescence, the couple faced new challenges. Arguments arose, choices had to be made about education, labor, and responsibilities, and they discovered that love required flexibility and negotiation. Yet, each challenge was met with the lessons learned in the early months, patience, presence, and the conscious choice to invest in one another. Their bond, like the moon, had phases. Some nights were bright and joyful, others were shadowed and difficult. But the cycle endured, as it always had. Through the years, the couple never forgot the sweetness of the first month. The honeymoon remained a guiding memory, not just a moment of passion, but a model for how to live. It taught them to celebrate beginnings, to honor change, to find joy in the ordinary, and to hold each other steady through the inevitable storms of life. They realized that love was both a celebration and a practice, a balance of sweetness and endurance, laughter and tears, joy and challenge. Years continued to unfold, and the children grew into young adults, carrying the lessons of their parents' love into their own lives. The couple watched with quiet pride as their eldest daughter helped her younger siblings with chores, showing patience and care that mirrored the examples she had seen since her earliest days. The eldest son discovered his own curiosity for the world beyond the village, asking questions about distant lands, ships, and the stories of travelers who passed through. The couple encouraged exploration while grounding their children in the values of attention, presence, and love. The honeymoon ethos extended into a new generation. Time brought subtle changes to their bodies, as it does for everyone. Wrinkles traced the corners of their eyes, hands bore the marks of years spent in labor and care, and hair, once dark and strong, now carried streaks of silver. Yet these changes did nothing to diminish the love between them. If anything, they deepened it, giving the bond a richness that could only come from enduring decades together. They had learned that love was not in the outward perfection of youth, but in the steadfastness of care, the intimacy of shared experience, and the quiet rituals that marked ordinary days as extraordinary. They continued their evening traditions. Firelight, moonlight, the soft sip of Mead, all remained sacred, connecting them to their beginnings and to each other. Sometimes they would sit outside wrapped in blankets, watching the moon rise over familiar hills and streams. The couple would recount memories of their first month, the nervous excitement of their wedding night, the taste of honey, and the golden glow of the mead. They would laugh at the clumsy mistakes they had made in the early days, marvel at the children they had raised, and reflect on the challenges that had strengthened them. Each reflection became a celebration of continuity, a recognition that love could endure, evolve, and deepen beyond imagination. The village itself had changed. New families arrived, old neighbors passed on, and the rhythms of life adapted to new needs and circumstances. Yet amidst these changes, the couple remained a constant presence, a living testament to the power of love practiced daily. Villagers often sought their counsel on matters of marriage, parenting, and life, recognizing that their wisdom was forged in decades of experience, trial, and devotion. The couple would share not only advice but stories, tales of the honeymoon, of Mead, of lunar cycles, and the philosophy of attentive, intentional love. Each story was a gift, a thread connecting the past to the present, reminding all who listened that sweetness and endurance must walk hand in hand. Occasionally, the couple would take small journeys beyond the village, traveling to nearby hills or distant rivers. Though they no longer had the energy for long expeditions, each journey carried the spirit of adventure they had cherished in their youth. They walked slowly, hand in hand, marveling at sunsets, the shimmer of water, the scent of forests, and the sounds of nature. Sometimes they would stop at ancient stones or remnants of old settlements, imagining the lives of those who had come before them. In these moments, the couple felt a profound connection to the continuity of life, the cycles of human experience, and the enduring rhythms of the moon and the seasons. In quiet, reflective moments, the couple discussed the philosophy of their lives. They spoke of the lessons of patience, endurance, and gratitude that the honeymoon had taught them. They acknowledged that passion was fleeting, but presence could be cultivated. They celebrated that life was unpredictable, that challenges were inevitable, yet that sweetness could always be found if they chose to notice it. The couple understood that love was not merely an emotion but a practice, a deliberate act of attention, care, and commitment that deepened with every year, every challenge, and every shared triumph. As they grew older, they found even more joy in observing the next generation. Their children married, bringing new honeymoons into the world, new rituals, and new cycles of joy and learning. The couple watched with satisfaction and awe, knowing that the philosophy they had lived by, the combination of sweetness, presence, and attentiveness, would continue to influence lives beyond their own. Each new couple that came into the family carried a spark of the same intentional love, a living legacy of the golden mead and the moonlit nights of decades past. They spent the final years of their life together in quiet companionship, celebrating ordinary days as extraordinary, honoring rituals of old while creating new ones. Each sunrise brought gratitude, each sunset reflection, and each moonlit night a reformation of connection. The honeymoon, once a single month of beginnings, had become a lifetime of lessons, a map guiding them through decades of joy, sorrow, growth, and intimacy. And as they held hands, eyes reflecting the glow of the hearth or the moon, they understood the enduring truth that love, tended with care, presence, and intention, was the sweetest gift life could offer, a gift that transcended time, generations, and even mortality. And when their time came, peacefully, side by side, the couple left behind a legacy not of wealth or monuments, but of a life fully lived in devotion, tenderness, and wisdom. The village remembered them, not just as elders, but as exemplars of love in practice. Stories of the honeymoon, the golden mead, and the moonlit rituals continued to be told, connecting future generations to the enduring truth they had embodied, that love is cultivated in everyday acts, nurtured in patience, celebrated in beginnings, and sustained across the cycles of life. Even centuries later, the tale of the couple, their honeymoon, and their devoted life would inspire those who heard it. Their story, rooted in ritual presence and intentionality, would remind people that sweetness is found not only in beginnings but in the practice of attention, care, and shared life. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, yet always returns, guiding and illuminating the path ahead. As the couple entered their twilight years, the rhythm of life slowed, but the depth of their connection only grew. They rose later in the mornings, savoring the quiet hours before the village came alive with daily tasks. The fields were smaller now, tended carefully with the help of their grown children, yet each plant, each row of crops, became a meditation, a reminder that life flourishes when attention and care are applied consistently. Evenings remained sacred. The hearth glowed warmly, and the moon rose as it had for decades, casting silver over the familiar hills and streams. They would sit together, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing memories, retelling stories from their early days of marriage, and occasionally laughing at the clumsy mistakes of youth. The mead was poured sparingly now, a golden drop of ritual that marked both celebration and reflection. Each sip reminded them of the lessons learned over a lifetime. Sweetness is fleeting, change is inevitable, but presence and devotion are enduring. Sometimes they revisited the forest paths of their youth, moving slowly hand in hand, noticing details that had once passed unnoticed: the curve of a branch, the pattern of moss on stones, the delicate scent of wildflowers. On these walks, they discussed dreams unfulfilled and marvels witnessed, reflecting on how the journey of life was richer than any single event or destination. They noticed how their own pace mirrored the natural cycles, slower, more deliberate, appreciating each moment with care. Occasionally, the couple would receive visits from grandchildren. The children were wide-eyed, curious, and eager to hear stories of times long past. The grandparents would recount tales of the honeymoon, the golden mead, the lunar cycles, and the adventures of youth. They spoke of the first months of marriage as both a beginning and a lesson, emphasizing that sweetness was cultivated, not just experienced, and that the moon's phases mirrored the ebb and flow of love. The grandchildren listened, captivated, understanding that love required patience, attention, and intentionality. The couple also faced moments of physical fragility. A winter illness would linger longer than expected, or aches would make daily tasks more difficult. Yet they faced these challenges together, often laughing at small mishaps or finding comfort in the routine of shared presence. They realized that the honeymoon's lesson extended into every stage of life, that sweetness is found not only in beginnings but in the act of showing up, of being present, of caring deeply even when circumstances are less than ideal. On one clear night, as the full moon rose over the horizon, the couple sat outside on their old wooden porch. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of pine and distant fields. They held hands, their fingers intertwined as they had done for decades. The husband spoke softly. "Do you remember the first moon, the mead, the nervous laughter?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "It feels like yesterday, and yet it was the start of everything." They were silent for a while, letting the moonlight wash over them, reflecting on the life they had built together, the joys, the challenges, the children, the rituals, the small moments that had made a life extraordinary. Time passed, as it always does, and the couple found that even in the inevitability of aging, there was beauty. They woke each morning grateful for presence, for connection, for the ability to share one more day. Each meal became a small celebration, each shared glance a reaffirmation of enduring devotion. The honeymoon, once a single month of beginnings, had become a lifetime philosophy, the cultivation of sweetness, the honoring of cycles, the commitment to presence, and the embrace of change. In their final years, they spoke often of legacy. They wanted their children, grandchildren, and the generations to follow to understand that love is an active practice, that beginnings are precious but continuity is sacred, and that rituals, small or grand, hold meaning because they connect us to one another and to the world around us. They encouraged each new couple in the family to celebrate their own honeymoons, to find ways to honor both sweetness and patience, and to recognize that love is not merely an emotion but a living, evolving journey. Eventually, the couple faced the final transition. They passed quietly, side by side, hands still intertwined, hearts full of decades of shared joy and wisdom. The village mourned their absence, yet celebrated their life, telling stories of the golden mead, the moonlit walks, the honeymoon that had endured not just a month, but an entire lifetime. Their legacy became a guiding star for those who followed, a reminder that love is cultivated through attention, care, and shared presence, and that sweetness can last if it is nurtured with intention and devotion. Even centuries later, the story of the couple's life continued to inspire. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren carried forward the lessons of the honeymoon, ensuring that the philosophy of patience, sweetness, attentiveness, and love was passed down through generations. Stories of moonlit nights, and golden beginnings reminded people that love is both fragile and resilient, fleeting and enduring, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. And in every retelling, the spirit of the honeymoon lived on, illuminating the path for those willing to cultivate love in every stage of life, just as the moon continues to wax and wane, casting light across the world. And so life flowed on, as it always does, with love as its enduring heartbeat, a golden thread running through time, connecting beginnings to endings, joy to sorrow, and moments of sweetness to the eternal rhythm of the moon. The honeymoon was no longer a single event, but a lens through which life itself was understood, a reminder that love, tended with care and presence, is the sweetest journey of all. As the seasons turned again and again, the village continued its quiet rhythm. New families arrived, old houses were repaired, and the fields swayed with the golden waves of grain. Yet the spirit of the couple endured in subtle, living ways, in the rituals of the hearth, in the traditions of moonlit walks, and in the golden cups of mead shared by each new generation. The honeymoon, once a momentary beginning, had become a timeless symbol, a reminder that love is cultivated, celebrated, and preserved through care, attention, and presence. Even as the memory of the couple faded from the minds of some, their story lived on through the lessons they had taught. Children who had grown under their guidance now told their own stories, passing down the philosophy of intentional love, patience, and appreciation for the small moments. Every full moon, every harvest festival, every evening by the fire became an opportunity to honor their legacy. People would raise a glass of mead, recalling the tale of the couple who had loved deeply, endured life's trials, and found sweetness in every ordinary day. And in the quiet of the night, when the moon rose high and silvered the fields, one could almost imagine the couple walking hand in hand through the forest paths of their youth. Their laughter carried in the rustle of leaves, their presence reflected in the shimmer of the streams, their love woven into the rhythm of life itself. Each star seemed to shine a little brighter, each gentle breeze carried a whisper of their devotion, and the cycles of the moon echoed the enduring truth they had lived, that love is not just felt, but practiced, nurtured, and celebrated in every moment, both ordinary and extraordinary. Thus, the honeymoon was no longer confined to a single month or a fleeting honeymoon trip. It had become a lens through which all life could be seen. The sweetness of beginnings was honored, the inevitability of change acknowledged, and the beauty of daily devotion celebrated. People understood that every relationship, every bond, and every shared moment contained the possibility for a lifetime of honeymoons, if only one tended it with care, presence, and intention. Even as centuries passed, travelers, lovers, and families would speak of the honeymoon, the golden mead, and the moonlit nights that had guided generations. They would remember that love is fragile yet resilient, fleeting yet enduring, ordinary yet extraordinary, and that the lessons of the past could illuminate every stage of life. And in every telling, the spirit of the couple endured, whispering the eternal truth that life is a mixture of honey and moonlight, that sweetness is found in beginnings but is preserved in care, and that love, when tended with devotion, is the most enduring gift of all. And so, the story ends where it began, with love, presence, and reflection. The moon continues to rise, the mead continues to be poured, and the lessons of the honeymoon continue to guide those who listen. Life flows onward, and those who embrace its rhythms, its sweetness, and its challenges discover the deepest joys. The couple's journey reminds us that beginnings are precious, but the true gift of life is in the devotion, care, and shared experience that follows. And in that knowledge, one finds peace, one finds joy, one finds the quiet triumph of a life fully shared, of love deeply lived, and of the enduring rhythm of the honeymoon that echoes through time. Good night, moonlight, good night, honey, and good night to the journey that stretches from a single golden cup to a lifetime of shared love.